everybody, Dr. J.W. Morrison talking again on how to awaken. This is a headache. Help me get out. Let's go, shall we? If you want to join me, turn to the book of Judges and chapter 14. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Up, for this is the day in which the Lord has delivered Sisera into your hand." Now Sisera, to put it mildly, was nothing but trouble. Has not the Lord gone out before you? Now I just want to say to you, in your journey to awakening, the Lord is gone out before you. He's with you. Jehovah is with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you, despite what Sisera might be making you think, what your organization might be making you think. No organization can come between you and the Lord. None. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him, and the Lord, Jehovah, routed Sisera, and all his chariots and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. Now, sometimes before we want to take things on and go into battle, we are faced with an internal fear. And this could be you at the moment. You could be sensing that something is just not right. The reason why you're having a headache and all this other stuff within your religion is because something is not right. Now, you might be blaming yourself for that, and part of it could be your fault. But unless you're aligning yourself properly with your conscience in accordance to love, and firstly love of yourself, not in a selfish way but in a caring way, then you will be able to have the alignment to love others around you. If you're having trouble within yourself, that's a red light to saying there's something wrong. There is something wrong with what I'm doing or where I am in my spiritual life, the organization that I am, or whatever it might be. And so Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled away on foot. Now, you'll find when you start to confront things and an organization is starting to be exposed, they're going to do one or two things. They're either going to lie or they're going to be honest. 9 times out of 10, they go into denial and begin to lie, or half lie. Here, Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled away. You know what he did? He left his army behind. He wasn't going to sink with the ship. He had no honor. There was no honor in this man. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword, and not a man was left. But where was Sisera? Now, you could be in a really tough situation in your spiritual, Christian, Jehovah Witness life. And you're getting information given to you, you've got people all around you and they're caring for you. But they're only caring for you on the basis that you align with what they believe. They're not helping you deep inside your heart. They're helping you based on a series of beliefs that you need to conform to get their acceptance. And if you don't want to listen to their counsel based on what their beliefs are, then you're really going to see who these people are. However, Sisera had fled away on foot to the tent of Jael. Now, inside all of us, there is a Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. Now just remember, Moses' father-in-law was a Kenite. And Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me." Now, why would Jael want to meet Sisera? Why? Let's find out. Because you are going to have to confront your Sisera. And you're going to have to go out and meet him or her and say to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me. do not fear. And when he had turned aside with her into the tent, she covered him with a blanket. Right? Then he said to her, please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. So she opened a jug of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him. And he said to her, stand at the door of the tent, and if any man comes and inquires of you, and says, is there any man here? You shall say no. So he's trying to get her to lie. But she was onto this bloke. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg. What did they do with the pegs at the cross? They nailed them into Jesus' hands, didn't they? And took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to seize her, and drove the peg into his temple, and it went down into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary. And so he died. It's time you got your hammer and your tent peg and drive it through the temple of anything that's stopping you from having a strong and healthy spiritual life. Not based on an organization, but based on the Lord Jesus Christ, the one who allowed the pegs, the nails, to be driven into his hands and feet. Because he wants to hold you with his hands and he wants to walk with you with his feet. There's a Sisera knocking on each one of our mind, on each one of our lives. And he will hound us and he will expect protection from us. He'll want us to cover him with our faith. But you take your tent peg in your hand and a hammer and go softly to him and drive that peg into his temple. Do you know what that is? Any deception and lies end through the power of the cross. Because Jesus took the tent pegs, the nails, in his hands and feet. And it went down into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary, and he died. And then, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him and said to him, come, I will show you the man whom you seek. She had done justice, and when he went into her tent, there lay Sisera, dead, with the peg in his temple. What is it that's stopping your mind from awakening to lies? Where are your resources? Are they broad or are they confined? Are they choked? I want to show you something. Give me 1 second. I want to show you this. It's called Google. Do you know what Google is? It can help you awaken. Let's type in JW and say 1914, for instance. And you get all this information. Look. All of it. Thousands and thousands and thousands of stuff. Now, I'm just going to click on a random one. I'm going to close my eyes, flick. I'll even go 10 pages deep. Watch this. Look how powerful this is. Look at this. Well, let's just go down a bit. We'll find something that's neutral. Jehovah Witnesses 1914. Let's have a look at this. Cult of Jehovah Witnesses. Overview. Jehovah Witnesses trace their origins to the 19th century Adventist movement in America. Did you know that? The movement began with William Miller, a Baptist lay preacher who in the year 1816 began proclaiming that Christ would return in 1843. His predictions of the Second Coming or Second Advent captured the imagination of thousands. Just let me get myself on here. Yeah. The imagination of thousands in Baptist and other mainline churches. Perhaps as many as 50,000 followers put their trust in Miller's chronological calculations and prepared to welcome the Lord, while as the appointed time approached, others watched nervously from a distance. Recalculations moved the promised Second Advent from March 1843 to March 1844, and then to October of that year. Alas, the date, too, passed uneventfully. After the disappointment of the 1844 prediction, Miller's following fell apart, with most of those who had looked to him returning to their respective churches before his death in 1849. Are you aware of this? But after the other disappointed followers kept the movement alive, although in a fragment form, their activities eventually led to the formation of several sects under the broad heading of Adventism, including the Advent Christian Church, the Life and Advent Union, the Seventh-day Adventists, and various other groups. Now you can study all this. The Jehovah Witnesses, likewise, trace their roots back to the Adventists. Did you know your roots come right back to the Adventists? But they do not often admit this to outsiders. I don't think many of them know. I don't think many Jehovah Witnesses know because they don't do their research. Nor do many witnesses know the details themselves. Jehovah Witnesses are accustomed to defending themselves against the charge that they are a new religious cult. They often respond that theirs is the most ancient religious group, older than Catholic and Protestant churches. In fact, they assert that Jehovah Witnesses have a history almost 6,000 years long, beginning while the first man, Adam, was still alive. That Adam's son Abel was the first of an unbroken line of witnesses, and that Jesus' disciples were all Jehovah Witnesses. Jehovah Witnesses in the Divine Purpose, page 8 to 9. So there gives you the reference to where they fought this. An outsider listening to such claims quickly realises, of course, that the sect has simply appropriated unto itself all the character named in the Bible as faithful witnesses of God. By such extrapolation, the denomination is able to stretch its history back to the beginnings of the human family, at least in the eyes of adherents who are willing to accept such arguments. But outside observers generally dismiss this sort of rhetoric and instead reckon the witnesses as dating back only to Charles Taze Russell, who was born on February 16, 1952, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Did you know this? This is just general, unharmful research. Begun to doubt not only church creeds and doctrines, but also God and the Bible itself. At this critical juncture, a chance encounter restored his faith and placed him under the influence of Second Adventist preacher Jonas Wendell. Did you know that? No barriers were immediately erected with respect to the Protestantism in general. New readers obtaining subscriptions to Zion's Watchtower were often church members who saw the magazine as a parachurch ministry, not as an anti-church alternative. Russell travelled about speaking from the pulpits of Protestant churches as well as to gatherings of his own followers. In 1879, the year of his marriage to Maria Frances Ackley, and also the year he began publishing Zion's Watchtower, Russell organised some 30 student groups or congregations scattered from Ohio to New England coast. Each local class or ecclesia came to recognise him as pastor, although geographically and Russell's writings and publishing activities prevented more than an occasional pastoral visit in person. This is how you study. Look. Wow. They believe that Jesus did not rise from the dead. Russell says his body either dissolved into gases or is still preserved somewhere today. They believe God is not triune. They believe that there is no such thing as a hell, everlasting torment. Hell is just a grave. The wicked are simply annihilated. They believe man has no spirit, and so on and so forth. They believe Jesus is just an agent of God, nothing more. They believe Jesus is Michael the Archangel. Jesus is a created being. They believed Russell when he said that in 1914 the millennium would occur and righteousness would be restored to the earth. As 1914 approached, he and his successor changed the date to 1915, 1916, 1924, 1928, and 1935 and 1975, and on to the present day. When you ask a Jehovah Witness about this, they will give you the party line, while the Watchtower is reaching different levels of enlightenment. And that is how you study. Now, if we come back to this, I just want to say, J.E.L. Heber's wife took a tent peg and a hammer in her hand and went softly to Caesarea and drove the tent peg in his temple, and it went down into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary. Now, what are you going to do about awakening? Really, what are you going to do? Let's look at some scriptures. John chapter 9 and verse 1. A man born blind receives his sight. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. Now, you can be in a religious organisation and be blind from the start. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay. Now just let me say, what was Adam made out of? The mud of the ground, the clay of the ground. With the saliva, what was Jesus doing when he spat on the ground and made clay? He was saying, I'm God in the flesh. Watch this. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. Now you tell me if you've ever seen anybody make an eye out of clay. And he said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Now this man all of a sudden could see, eh? Therefore the neighbours of those... Now listen, once you begin to awaken, things are going to happen. Therefore the neighbours of those who previously had seen that he was blind said, Is not this he who sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. He said, I am he. Therefore they said to him, How were your eyes opened? How did you get awakened? He answered and said, A man called Jesus came, made clay, and anointed my eyes, and said to me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And so I went and washed, and I received my sight. Then they said to him, Where is he? And he said, I do not know. Now imagine getting to the point where somebody's just given you your sight, and this is what happens. Things begin to flicker, you get your sight, and then you get asked, well, where is he? Where's Jesus? And unfortunately, most people just don't know. Some people say he come back in 1914 and he's in New York. Well, they don't know. That's not true. Here we go. So you're starting to see, this is what's going to happen. What are the religious people going to do to you? The Pharisees excommunicate the healed man. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he received his sight. And he said to him, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. They said to the blind man again, What do you say about him because he opened your eyes? Now, they wanted him to trap him into saying that he is the Christ, but he didn't have the courage to do it like many of you. He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight. They just didn't want to believe it, right? Until they called the parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? Right, this is the parents. What are your parents going to do if all of a sudden you say, I can see, I know who Jesus is now? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but by what means he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. People will deny Christ. Don't you doubt it. You'll come to Christ, he'll give you your sight, and they're going to go, we don't know, we don't want anything to do with it. Basically, he is of age, ask him. That's what they said. Go and ask him, leave us out of it. You'll be left all on your own. He will speak for himself, and you should speak for yourself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that Jesus was Christ, he would be put out of the organization. Therefore his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So they called to the man who was blind, and said to him, Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Yeah, they're sinners too, whether he is a sinner or not. Oh, they're talking about Jesus. Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. Though I was blind, now I see. That's what we should be doing. You. Then they said to him again, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered them, I told you already, you idiots, and you don't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Well, he's getting smart now. Then they reviled him and said, You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. But they did. They knew he was from Bethlehem. Then the man answered and said to them, Why, this is a marvelous thing, that you do not know where he is from. Yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshipper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. So there's some trouble in the camp. They answered and said to him, You were completely born in sins, and you are teaching us? And they cast him out. What did they do? They shunned him. And you'll be shunned if you think that Jesus is the Christ. As you awaken, that's the conclusion you'll come to. And you won't want to know anything of organisations and religions, for the most part. You'll just want to be yourself. Some people just are private people. And on that controversial note, I'll close. Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.